The European Union accepts Ukraine as a candidate to receive membership. Ukraine now joins Turkey, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Serbia, and Moldova as the only officially recognized candidates hoping to join the EU. The EU has not welcomed any new countries since 2013 when Croatia joined. However, with Russia's ongoing war on the country now entering its fifth month, Ukraine hopes to get around any political red tape to join the EU. Joining us now is the Director of Communications for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, Andriy Dobryansky. Thanks for being here tonight, as always. So what is the status right now of Ukraine's application to join the bloc?
Candidate status, that's the big news. This is different than what Ukraine has been given in the past in terms of promises that one day you will have some accession. This is an official candidate status, similar to Ukraine's weight and Ukraine's promises of eventually being in NATO, and they would get a candidate status as a membership action plan. There is an action plan that now both the EU and Ukraine have on how Ukraine can finally become an EU member. And that involves a long-term strategy of reforms, market, constitutional reforms. All these things, are things in the future, but the important thing that is official candidate status.
Right. And Ukraine does have a history of corruption and oligarchy, like a lot of countries in the region. And it wasn't considered for membership before this invasion. So it will be required to perform political and economic reforms, as you mentioned, strengthening the rule of law, fighting corruption. Is that something you're confident Ukraine can do?
Absolutely. This is something, actually, again, I'll go back to this being a partnership. So this is not like the EU is an empire and taking over things, but rather each country individually contributes something to the health of the EU. For Ukraine, that's going to mean a candidate status for several years, likely. And during that time, so long as the West does what it needs to do in terms of making sure Ukraine is armed, that they can fight off Russia, that they can open up the Black Sea for food to get to the rest of the world, what's going to happen in Ukraine is an incredible explosion of things that's going to be marked off next week in Switzerland at the Ukrainian Reconstruction Conference. A lot of Western money is going to be required to rebuild some of the scenes we saw today on the news. Severodonetsk is being evacuated, not so much because the Ukrainian soldiers aren't going to defend it. There's just nothing left to defend. The city has been leveled down to the ground. And it's cities like that that are going to require billions of dollars from the West to actually make sure Ukraine stands going forward.
And what does this signal to Russia and to the rest of the world? And what does it do to the spirit and the morale of the Ukrainian people who are just continuing to bravely take up arms and fight the invaders?
I think you saw it on the faces of the Ukrainian cabinet ministers when the news came down, people in tears. This week, we're going to have, I just saw that President Biden has arrived in Europe for the G7. 8 years ago, we had the G7 meet in Hague, and it was supposed to meet with Russia in Sochi. But unfortunately, Russia invaded 8 years ago Ukraine. And from that moment on, Russia was never welcomed back to what was then the G8. At that time, what the G7 promised is increased sanctions until Russia changes its direction. And what we've seen during this time is Russia hasn't changed its direction and, in fact, has committed genocide on Ukrainian territory. So I expect to hear not only further news about how Ukraine and the EU work together, but when we have the G7 meet and NATO in Madrid, when we hear those leaders talking, we're most likely going to be hearing increased sanctions from Europe and some kind of new assistance from the United States.
So is that the immediate effect that this candidacy has? Because, as you mentioned, some countries have been waiting for 15 years, who have been candidates to actually join. So what is the immediate effect of this?
I remember being in Ukraine in 2010 before the criminal president Yanukovych came to power, and there was an EU flag already flying above the Ukrainian cabinet and ministries of foreign affairs. So this is not a short-term goal of Ukraine. This is a long-term goal, much like NATO integration as well. But again, it's the partnership. It's how can Ukraine, in the intervening time between candidate status and a full-fledged member, how that's actually going to benefit the economy of Europe. And at the same time, how can outside sources, including these reforms that are part of the candidate status, but again, I'll go back to the recovery of Ukraine. You're going to have money from the EU. Britain is a separate entity now, and they're going to have a say in it, and the United States. Many international entities and countries are going to have a say, and that's going to help do what these reforms are calling for, which is oversight of money, making sure we de-oligarchize Ukraine. These are goals that Ukraine itself has. So all of this working in concert together means a brighter future, not just for Ukraine, but for Europe as a whole.
But not easy when you're fending off an invading army.
Absolutely. I mean, to get to Reconstruction, you have to stop the war. I think concentrating on what's happening in the Black Sea is very important. We just had a major conference in D.C. last week, and to a person, the former ambassadors of the United States to Ukraine, former military commanders of the United States, all understand that the world can do something about the forced famine in the rest of the world with Russia blocking the Black Sea. The world has access through the Danube and other areas of getting into the Black Sea and declaring to Russia, you cannot touch this port of Odessa. You cannot go there. We're going to use that port to feed the rest of the world. But the world has yet to act on that remark. So we want to get the rest of the world to understand that if you don't act now, the growing season in Ukraine is not going to, last out. Those silos that Russia is actively bombing, that's food that can feed several countries in the rest of the world. So it's going to take a lot of the rest of the world to step up to the plate because, as we've seen already, Russian soldiers have died at the hands of Ukrainians, over 30,000 according to Ukrainian estimates. That what's happening in Severodonetsk is just one front. What's happening in Kherson is an advance of Ukrainians on Russia's position. And the same thing in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is now fully controlled by Ukrainians because they're getting the Western weapons. If the West wants to do that in Odessa, we can open up the rest of the Black Sea for food to come out.
All right, Andrzej Dobryansky, thank you, as always, for your time.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.